All right, let's dive into a really fascinating and honestly pretty provocative argument we found. We're going to unpack a source that claims the clash between the Trump administration and sanctuary cities isn't just another political fight. Nope, they're calling it a new American Civil War. So let's break down exactly how they build that case.
Right off the bat, the source we're looking at doesn't pull any punches. It calls New York City ground zero for a new American Civil War. Now, that's not just some throwaway line. Using language like that is a very deliberate choice, framing this whole thing as a fight for the very soul of the nation.
So what could possibly spark a so-called civil war? Well, according to this source, it all boils down to a specific series of events that happened incredibly fast, literally over just a few hours. As the source tells it, everything kicked off on December 7th. It claims that New York's new mayor-elect, Zoran Mondani, put out a video telling undocumented immigrants how to sidestep federal agents. And the reaction from the Trump administration? It was immediate and huge. They announced a massive federal operation right there in the city. The point the source is making here is that this was way more than just policy. It was a direct challenge that escalated things to a whole new level.
Now, to really sell this idea of a civil war, the source doesn't just stick to today's news. It reaches way back into American history to draw a pretty controversial parallel to explain what it thinks is happening with these sanctuary cities.
And this is the absolute core of their argument. They use this very loaded term, the Blue Confederacy. It's not just a clever name. It's meant to directly compare modern sanctuary cities with the Confederate states from the 1860s. The suggestion is that they're basically engaging in a new kind of rebellion against the federal government.
And here's how they connect those dots. The argument is that, look, back in the 1860s, the Confederacy said federal laws they didn't like just didn't apply to them. The source claims that these blue sanctuary cities are essentially doing the exact same thing today with immigration law. So in their view, it's the same fight all over again, states versus the federal government. To give this whole idea some legal firepower, the source points to a really fundamental part of the U.S. Constitution, the Supremacy Clause. And it's pretty simple, really. It just says that when a federal law and a state law are in conflict, the federal law wins, every time. The source presents this as the ultimate legal checkmate, arguing it makes any of this local defiance totally unconstitutional.
Okay, so with all that historical and legal framing, how did the Trump administration actually push back? The source dives into the specifics.
The main tool in the federal toolbox was this brand new Homeland Security task force set up right in New York City. And the source makes a big deal out of this being a first-of-its-kind operation. Its official mission was to tackle transnational crime and boost public safety, which, you can see, is a direct challenge to the city's whole sanctuary policy.
And this slide really gives you a sense of the sheer muscle behind this thing. I mean, this wasn't some small team. They brought in all the heavy hitters: HSI, the FBI, U.S. attorneys, ICE, basically every major law enforcement player in the region. According to the source, the message was unmistakable. The federal government is here, and it's using its full power.
And what about results? Well, the source claims the impact was immediate. In just one day, they report that 29 different federal teams made 48 arrests of undocumented immigrants. This number is presented as concrete proof that this task force wasn't just for show. It was actively making arrests.
But you know, this argument goes even deeper. It's not just about politics or laws. The source claims that what we're really seeing is a fundamental split in America based on culture and demographics.
So the source basically divides the country into two opposing camps. On one side, you have what it calls the American side, which it says believes in the rule of law and the nation's founding principles. And on the other side, there's the post-American side, which the source claims is made up of immigrant populations from non-Western nations who are trying to tear down those very structures.
And this right here is a crucial piece of the puzzle for their argument. They draw a straight line between demographics and politics. The claim is that these immigrant communities are electing politicians who are actively working to dismantle the country's institutions, pushing the U.S. toward what the source calls a post-American future.
And all of this, the law, the history, the demographics, it all builds to the source's final, and I think you'll agree, most audacious comparison. It tries to cast the president in a very particular historical light.
So if you follow their logic all the way through, this is where you land. The argument culminates in this final analogy. If sanctuary cities are really the new Confederacy, then President Trump is the new Abraham Lincoln.
In this view, his actions aren't just political moves. They're seen as a historic duty to preserve the Union by crushing a modern-day rebellion.
So there you have it. That's the argument from this source, laid out from start to finish. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. What does it really mean when our political fights start getting described as a civil war? What does that kind of language tell us about the state of things today? Thanks for tuning in.